Well, hello, everybody. Before we get started with this week's episode, we have a small announcement to make about what's going to be happening the next few weeks on Sacred Realms. If you've been paying attention to the podcast over the last few weeks and months, then you might remember that we've been teasing a little secret project that we were going to insert into things at some point. And I'm pleased to announce that that time has finally come due to a few different factors making this just the best possible time to do it. Of course, we did just get done doing a round of voting in the Patreon for what we're going to be playing. What we said was what we were going to be playing next in Season 13 of Sacred Realms. That was just a little bit misleading. We are going to be having a mini secret season between things, obviously finishing Spirit Tracks up today. And then the voting just landed on Majora's Mask as the winner for the next game. But as Matt just got married and is on his honeymoon and we needed a few-week break, we decided to go ahead and insert the secret project that we've been working on for quite some time in the interim. So I'm pleased to announce today that Season 13 of Sacred Realms will be a short miniature season focusing on Four Swords Adventures. It was really a pleasure to hop into this game and to start playing it. We had the opportunity to get 4 people in a room together when Cody was here over the holidays from Australia. So Cody, Josh, Matt, and I all got together and had a few really long play sessions and managed to record the first episode in person. And then, of course, as we work towards finishing the game over the next few weeks, we're going to end up rotating that cast out just a little bit. But yeah, it's going to be a really fun little experimental mini season. It's not going to be all that different from the Sacred Realms format that you know and love, but since it is a multiplayer game, it is going to be just a little different than what you've seen come before. It's been a really great time, and we're really excited to pull the cover off of that starting next week. Just a fair warning, that episode did record quite a while ago now. That recorded somewhere in the Christmas area. So it's been just a minute. The episode that comes out after that one is much more recent, and then we're going to be recording the next 2 episodes. I think it's going to be a 4-episode mini season in the coming weeks once Matt is back from his honeymoon. So all fun things to look forward to. We know that that's going to be a difficult one to play along with. It's very, very hard to track down the whole setup required to actually play it outside of emulation. So we'll be dropping links on our Discord and socials and stuff for some fun video playthroughs so that y'all can follow along without playing the game and enjoy the season to its fullest. But in the meantime, rank and review for Spirit Tracks begins now. On with the show. Welcome to Sacred Realms. It's a great day in Hyrule, y'all. Welcome to Sacred Realms, a Zelda Retrospective Podcast for the final time in Season 12. I'm your host, Lyndon Willoughby, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Matt Willoughby. How are you doing tonight, Matt?
I'm all right, Lyndon. It's been a long couple of weeks doubling up recordings, just, getting everything ready to go. And I'm ready to call us to close out this chapter, I guess. Looking forward to at least myself getting a little bit of a break here.
How does it feel knowing that this is the last episode that we will be recording for probably about 3 weeks?
It's weird. We're going to be getting back into it, and hopefully we don't lose any of our spunk. And I'm sure we won't, but it's weird. That'll be the longest we've ever gone without recording, except for when Sawyer was born.
Yeah, for sure. Yep, man. Sometimes I forgot how much runway we managed to build up in the lead up to that whole thing. But yeah, and we successfully did it this time as well, which is good. I'm really proud of us. Recording material not only for the end of Spirit Tracks, but also for what I'm assuming will be the publicly known secret project that we've been teasing for a while, which is going to be coming out right after that. Which is, of course, our mini season covering Four Swords Adventures.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. I think people are going to enjoy that one quite a bit. It's been a lot of fun playing through Four Swords Adventures for the first time for both of us. And, I think that there's a lot of good to be had in this season that's coming up.
Yep, 100%. Of course, before we can get into a new season of Pod, we have to wrap up the season that we're in. Tonight, we, of course, are bringing on a third party, maybe not necessarily a neutral third party, but a third party nonetheless, to assist Matt and I should we require the services of a tiebreaker vote. Now, normally we bring on the mustachioed wonder himself, the detective, to help us do that. However, life does sometimes get in the way, and also it's Spirit Tracks we're talking about, and I don't know that he was too excited to play it in the first place, so the detective will not be joining us this season. We'll catch him next time. Here instead, to join us for this rank and recap, returning for his second appearance in that role, is Max Nichols, my coworker at Bungie, noted professional game designer. Max, how are you doing tonight?
I am doing great. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you here. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if your excitement to be on this episode was enough to outweigh your dread at actually having to sit down and finish out Spirit Tracks. But here we are, regardless.
I'll just say that if I hadn't agreed to this episode, I may not have been able to bring myself to finish this game.
Yeah. So that bodes well. That's a really good square one for this whole discussion, which is great. Oh, man. This is going to be an interesting one for a few different reasons. I mean, not only are we sitting here with Max instead of with the detective, but Matt, you and I have been forced to record this one remotely, which is not something that you and I have to do all that often, but it looks like the possibility for very bad weather is a real thing for us this evening.
Yeah, no, big hail, large wind, possible tornado warning. Figured it was probably best to just hang out at home for the both of us.
No doubt about that. And to add another layer on top of all of this, I'm pretty sure I'm starting to lose my voice. So I like to believe that it's going to hold out for the duration of this episode. I'm trying to remember which episode it was. Do you remember the last time I was losing my voice and it just like completely went down the tubes during the recording of the episode? And by the end, I was completely unintelligible.
I don't remember which episode it was specifically, but I do remember that happening. Yes.
Yes. So, So, anywho, my wife is going to bring me a hot toddy about an hour into this thing, and that ought to, give my throat the fortitude that it needs to carry forward. So fingers crossed on that whole situation. She's a helper that way. But anyway, yeah, I mean, usually, Max, I would ask you how you're doing and everything, but we talked to you just the week before last. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we just kind of hop right into the main episode here and talk about our thoughts and feelings about Spirit Tracks now that it's over. How's that sound, everybody?
Sounds great.
Sounds good to me. Let's do it.
Matt, the one thing we have to do before we get into housekeeping.
Are we doing whiskey bit? Are you even drinking whiskey?
Well, I am currently drinking a whiskey. I was assuming that you brought something with you as well. And
I did
just
not,
figured that
actually.
We could just...
I am just currently drinking water.
Wow.
Hey, look.
That information shocks me.
I've got a wedding in 9 days, so trying to do a little bit of a cleanse, maybe shed a little bit of poundage before it starts. It's a little close to the vest, but any little bit helps in the photos.
Good on you. Your goal is a noble one. Max, how about you? Are you sipping anything tonight?
I have a shot of Japanese plum wine.
Ooh,
Which is very tasty.
exotic. I like that.
Hadn't had it before, so I picked some up. So I wanted to try it.
I have never had plum wine, so you'll have to let us know how that is. If it's something that you would maybe get again, or if it's a more of a dud.
It's quite sweet, which I like, but I also have like the alcohol palate equivalent of like a toddler. I like my fruity, sweet, sugary cocktails mostly. So make of that what you will.
It's good to know what you like, though, and not a man on this planet can judge you for it, lest he himself be judged. I personally am. You know what I'm having, Matt? I pulled the Jack Daniel's 12 down off the shelf tonight.
Oh, well, that's because I'm not there. You don't share the good stuff when I'm around.
I mean, I love you very much. You're one of my favorite people in this entire world. The Jack Daniel's 12 is just for me. You want some Jack Daniel's 12? You can go get it yourself.
Sounds about right.
But it is delicious. This is in Jackson Willoughby, the whiskiesman's own words, one of the best whiskeys within its price bracket that he's ever had. And I have to agree with him. The Jack Daniel's 12-year is absolutely delicious. I managed to get this at MSRP just by lucky chance, but I think it's one of those bottles that goes for the $300 to $400 range if you try to get it on secondary. As many of the best bourbons tend to be, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's a real shame that they're so expensive, but I guess it is what it is. Hopefully that
whiskey bubble is a real thing.
Yeah, hopefully that bourbon bubble pops at some point soon for those of us who enjoy bourbon for what it is, not an investment opportunity.
The bourbon bubble is about to pop. Coming up right behind it is the plum wine bubble. So there you go, Max. You got to stockpile all the plum wine. You can get your yeah, exactly right. Buy while it's low. If plum wine doesn't go anywhere over the next 2 years, then I'm sorry. Please don't come to me for investment advice when you're trying to get into a new hobby. I beg you. Oh man. But anyway, JD12, good pick. Abbreviated whiskey bit tonight. Next time we record on the other side of your honeymoon, we'll probably do this thing a little bit more formally. How's that sound?
There you go. Sounds like good idea to me.
Maybe tell you what, for the next one, what we should probably do is you should try to bring a bottle back from the Maui winery. That we can split. It'll be wine bit instead of whiskey bit. But yeah.
Hey, that's good wine though.
Yeah. Their Petite Syrah is delectable. Probably my favorite that I've ever had. So you should get on that. I'm giving you a job while you're on your honeymoon. So everything else is easy. Just
honeymoon
homework.
Side quest.
It's a bloopy trail.
It's a honeymoon bloopy trail. I love it. It wouldn't be. The thought of spending several weeks without giving you something to work on just doesn't sit right with me. So there you have it. Should be a pretty fun one for you to get to.
To be clear to everyone listening, I will only be on my honeymoon for 1 week. He's just saying several weeks in the fact that we won't be recording for 3 weeks.
You're not going to Maui for 3 weeks straight?
I wish. No, we are not going to Maui for 3 weeks straight.
Oh man, maybe 1 year. Maybe in the very far future we'll be doing well enough to where we can rent out one of those super yachts that are on the Below Deck show.
Wow.
And we can just be, we can just be the terrible people who go on those. The crew hates.
That is a level of wealth that I don't even think I aspire to. That just sounds like a miserable amount of wealth.
Just got to get Sacred Realms to really take off.
I'm kind of with Matt on this one. Now that I think about it, I feel like the disgusting amount of riches that you would have to have in order to do that. I just don't know that I would be able to maintain any level of self-respect or drive in my life if I had quite that much cash to throw at something that expendable. But
yeah, seriously.
You never know what the future holds. Yeah, but cool. All right, well, let's go ahead and get into the housekeeping and then jump into the episode. If you didn't know, Sacred Realms is a weekly re-examination of The Legend of Zelda, one little slice at a time. Sacred Realms drops every Wednesday and is available on all major podcast networks. Every week we play a new section of a Zelda game, and then we sit down here to talk and to drop our hot takes. If that sounds fun to you, please head over to Apple Podcasts, hit that subscribe button, and be sure to leave us a review. 5-star reviews are greatly appreciated, and they have a chance to get a shout out here on the show. If you want more Sacred Realms in your life, you can head over to patreon.com/sacredrealmspod and get access to our Discord channel, listener mail, vote on what game we play next, just got done doing that by the time you will be listening to this recording anyway, and much more. Additionally, one of the benefits that Master Sword patrons and above get is that we read their names every week here on the show. Those legendary individuals are Naughty Nexus, Freddy, Brandon, Shrikewill, Joseph, Nintendo, Adam, Sakura Sky, Art, Jeremy, Dante 2, Tom, Andy, Billy, Connor, Rachel, Shepherd Street, Matthew, Chris, Daniel, Fallout 907, Kelso, Tiffany the Star, Patrice, Stephanie, Darknuck, Il Maestro himself, Brian, George, Mike, Dylan, Lennon, Kolku, Rowan, Josh, Nick, Dante, Gep, Brittany, Davey, Haru the Mighty, Derek, Albert, Mark, Andy, Cameron, Daniel, Nick D_TV, your guest of the evening himself, Maximum Nichols, Garrett, and Drew. These are the most legendary of individuals, and I would hang out with all of them doing anything except for playing Phantom Hourglass or Spirit Tracks any day of the week.
Yes, I would agree with that. Yeah, 100%. 100%.
I'll play Zelda 2 with any of them.
Yes, I would also play Zelda 2 with any of them.
So we could do a pass the controller situation. So rewinds every time you die. You just have to pass the controller.
Ooh, man, that's
the way.
That's pretty rough, honestly.
Get sibling rivalries going. Who can keep the controller for longer?
I think it would be pretty short stints, but who's to say? Maybe I'm better at that game than I remember. But without further ado, let's get into the Sacred Realms recap. We do this once per season at the end of every season. It's a 6-part analysis of the game we just got finished playing, and at the very end, we will rank it against the other games that we have played in the series. Where will Spirit Tracks end up? Who's to say? At the top of this discussion, let's go ahead and give you a reminder of the ranking as it currently stands. The ranking is as follows. Number 12, The Adventure of Link. Number 11, Phantom Hourglass. Number 10, The Legend of Zelda. Number 9, Twilight Princess. Number 8, A Link to the Past. Number 7, A Link Between Worlds. Number 6, The Minish Cap. Number 5, Link's Awakening. Number 4, The Wind Waker. Number 3, Skyward Sword. Number 2, Ocarina of Time. And number 1, Breath of the Wild. And of course, during the plot section, we will also be discussing the ranking of the final dungeon against everything else in the series, so can't forget about that. Let's go ahead and start off with part 1, which is our discussion about the plot, just generally. And of course, during this discussion, we'll get into some sub-discussions about this game's version of Link, Zelda, the main enemy, all of those things. But just to kick us off, Max, we talked a lot with you in the Sand Temple episode about how we all feel about the gameplay of Spirit Tracks, right? But we didn't spend a ton of time discussing the story and the plot. Like, we talked a little bit about some plot happenings that happened that week. But I want to kick it to you first. Give us some thoughts about how you feel about the story of Spirit Tracks as a whole now that it's over, the tale that it's been telling.
That's actually a very interesting question to me. There's a lot of things that I really like kind of on paper about the story of this game, right? I love Zelda's personality. I love the way she is your companion character. I like the fact that there's a non-Ganon enemy. I like the references back to the Wind Waker characters and even the cameo from Nico. And I like that they have an antagonist, a major antagonist who switches sides and kind of ultimately ends up fighting the other antagonist, which isn't really a thing that happens in Zelda very often. The only other examples I can think of are maybe like A Link Between Worlds. So I like all those things. And yet I do not find most of the story very emotionally gripping. Like I don't find myself caring very much about what's going on. And that's probably a side effect of a lot of other things that I think aren't working very well in this game, rather than an actual direct indictment of this story. Like if I was falling in love with the world more and falling in love with the side characters more and like feeling any emotional attachment to these sage equivalent Locomos, like if all those things were working, I bet I would be much more gripped by the events of the story because the stakes would feel more meaningful. So that's kind of where I stand overall. It's got a lot of good bones, but doesn't quite deliver on them.
I think that's a really good way of putting it, is that there's a lot of opportunity here for really cool things to be happening, and they just aren't. Like, it just doesn't really come together to be anything crazy, and that's unfortunate. Like Max said, there is a big thing about specifically like Burns' character being totally unique, in my opinion, among Zelda characters. And that is unfortunate that doesn't come into play more. I wish that it did. But it's just like, I don't know, there's a lot that could have happened, and none of it came together to be super compelling. Like, other than Zelda, which I think Zelda as a character was very compelling to me. I thought that she was probably the best part of the whole game, honestly. And outside of that, I don't know. There was not a lot that was really moving the needle for me here.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think that's about where I'm at too. It is a shame. I'm sort of trying to kind of parse in my own mind how much my disappointment stems from things that are completely unrelated to the story at all. Like you're saying, Max, there are a lot of things about this game that underwhelm me, right? And most of them are more of a, the depth of the world, the presentation, the mechanics, the combat, the structure of what you're actually doing, train traversal, things like that. And it really does make me wonder how much is my opinion of those things just sort of coloring the whole experience here? Because I think you're right. On paper, we have some things that are very interesting and some things that I think are actually done much better than what was happening in Phantom Hourglass, right? For instance, I actually think that this whole timeline, the adult timeline post defeating Ganon in Wind Waker, is one of the most interesting possibilities in my mind to explore in terms of like new Zelda story, because it can basically be anything, Other Zelda games occasionally get bogged down both within the story that they're trying to tell, and just metatextually, like people analyzing the game outside of actually playing it, right? Like we saw this a lot with Tears of the Kingdom. There was a decent amount of fan backlash towards that game because there was an expectation that it was going to get neatly slotted into a timeline somewhere, right? And specifically an expectation that it was like, cool, we're going to get a confirmation that it's in like the child timeline at the very far end of it. And, we're going to have these specific references that draw it back to Ocarina of Time or whatever. And that didn't happen. And there was disappointment in some circles about that. I mean, not really on my end of things, but it was out there. The nice thing about this timeline where we're at right now is that you can basically bypass that entire issue. It basically gives you a blank check to reinvent the Zelda series in any way that you kind of want to, And just on paper, what they came up with, founding a new continent of Hyrule that has a different generational curse, evil enemy, and it's got a completely different, we don't have sages, we have Locomo, we have this entire different legendarium of things to draw from. I think sounds very promising. But yeah, it really is all just down to the execution of it, right? And I wonder how much of that is just, as grand as the story sounds, maybe it's just difficult to portray a tale of that scope on one of the handheld games. I don't think that any handheld Zelda game was really completely equipped to tell that kind of story until we get to about the A Link Between Worlds era, right? And even then, like A Link Between Worlds does a lot with what it has, but it's still just much more difficult to tell a grand this is the kind of story that to me could have supported a tentpole 3D console Zelda game. Are you kind of tracking with where I'm going with this observation, Max?
Yeah, I share a lot of those sentiments, to be honest. Like, one of my big disappointments about this game is that they didn't do something more outlandish with the setting. Since they had the chance to do it, right? Like, normally Zelda feels a little bit too married to the, Link, Zelda, Ganon, Triforce, Master Sword, Hyrule story, right? Like, that's just the same thing over and over again. And it's good in a lot of games, but a lot of my very favorite Zelda experiences are when they break free of those things and tell some wacko new story, like Link's Awakening or Majora's Mask. This could have been that, right? This could have been like a very weirdly, unusually themed setting. Like, this could have been Halloween Land. Like, they could have done anything. This could have been Western, Zelda the Western, like I mentioned last time. But instead, they kind of just do the same kind of like biomes, you might say, as they do in any other Zelda game. And I'm overall disappointed with that. And there's also a bunch of story related things that like they could have potentially done and didn't do to, I don't know, like show us more stuff in the Zelda world. That's never been a goal of theirs. It's always something I'm interested in. I don't want to uphold these things as too much of a strike against the game, because it's kind of just like, why didn't they do this totally different thing that they weren't even trying to do? Feeling that I have.
Yeah, I think that's fair, right? It's difficult to criticize a game for not meeting goals that it was never like stating that it was setting out to hit, right? So that's definitely a good point. But I do think there is something to what you're saying, though, about like really, if you didn't know that this wasn't Hyrule proper, then there's nothing cluing you into the fact that that's the case, right? Like, you could go and play this game never knowing that it wasn't the same Hyrule as the ones from other Zelda games, right? Because it does have mostly all the same stuff, and is kind of hitting a lot of the same themes and things that other Zelda games do. But yeah, I think that what I do enjoy about this quite a lot, though, is that at least it's progressing the story of this timeline in a more meaningful way than Phantom Hourglass, right? Because I know at the end of Phantom Hourglass, we had a lot of hope in that game and the story it was going to tell, knowing that it was a direct sequel to Wind Waker. It's like, sure, tell us about the voyages of Tetra and her pirate crew as they seek out a new world, right? That sounds great.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the game, it turns out that you basically were just kind of walking in place the whole time, essentially, right?
It was a weird bottle episode dream, or at least so it seemed at the time.
So at least what Spirit Tracks has managed to do is advance the story further, right? In kind of a similar way as like, it was one of those things that as a kid I really liked about the Narnia books, right? Where...
Yes. Voyage of the Dawn Treader.
Well, and actually Prince Caspian specifically, right? Where like you can... you pick up a story and it can feature some of the same characters and settings and themes and whatnot, but just the time jump, the 100 years in the future, like catching up with the threads of things from the same world that you were in before, but things that have just kind of moved on since that point. Like, there's a little bit of that here that I do enjoy. Now that I'm thinking about it, a Voyage of the Dawn Treader Zelda game sounds fantastic. Like, I know that's I know that's basically just kind of like Wind Waker, right? The sailing game, but
it's funny to me because before you brought it up in my head, I was like, I should compare this to Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and we were thinking of completely unrelated Narnia comparisons here.
Look, Narnia is great, man. I have to agree with Lyndon. Generally, I land on the Prince Caspian side of Chronicles of Narnia, but and you're right, Lyndon. Voyage of the Dawn Treader is a bit Wind Waker, but I think that the lines that you guys are drawing are really accurate in that it's always, or it seems to be so far in most of the adult timeline games, that there's just potential to do new interesting things, that either they do new things that aren't that interesting, or they just kind of don't. And I wish that it was different.
Yeah.
What do you two think about how they handled the concept of introducing trains? Magical train, the tracks are the seal on a demon lord's prison. Do you think they did a good job with that?
I mean, I'll go first here. I mean, yes, I think so. Like, I think the table setting for the story of Spirit Tracks, like in the first episode, I think Matt and I were pretty positive on the setup and the foundation for the story that it was going to tell. Because it all really does feel like the best kind of Zelda table setting, right? Like, here's this crazy gimmick, and we're kind of forming the whole game around that. But here's like the lore explanation for like why this exists in the first place. And I think that it is interesting in and of itself, right? Like, if you're going to have the Zelda train game, then, I mean, yeah, like having this kind of arcane reason that the train tracks exist in the first place, outside of just like, oh, the inhabitants of this world developed like steam locomotion and they just needed to get from one place to another, right? Like, having a little extra depth on top of it, aside from that, I do think is good. Like, the backstory and the foundational lore of Spirit Tracks to me and of New Hyrule is really solid just in principle. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, I agree. I think that we said a lot of this in the first episode. It's unique. It's interesting, and like the aspect of trains being a thing was not off-putting to either of us at all. And it seems like for a lot of people it was for this game, but that was just not something that bothered me at all, except for the way that the trains were executed. Like, the concept and the theory of the trains was not the problem. It was the execution of. And yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting. I thought it was good. I thought the backstory, it was kind of like it was in the Minish Cap, where I was like, yeah, I'm just like on board with it. It wasn't like doing anything crazy for me, but it was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the same boat as you two. The anachronistic complaint, like people being like, oh, Zelda is medieval, it shouldn't have trains, I've always thought was hilarious, because, like, I don't know, my favorite and first Zelda game had phone booths in it. Like,
right.
Whatever. Typewriters and
yeah, I completely agree. I mean, that's kind of one avenue of argument that I'll never be able to get on board with, right? Because to me, it just kind of demonstrates sort of a lack of imagination, and it really bottles Zelda up into like a false container of like what Zelda can accomplish. You know, I think with like with a good artistic vision behind it, with a good vision for what the final product should be, Zelda can kind of be anything, really. It's sort of like Star Trek in my mind. You know, like, Star Trek is usually this kind of thing, but every now and again, Star Trek is this other sort of thing. You know, sometimes it's a courtroom drama. Sometimes it's sometimes it's a Western, you know, sometimes we keep coming back to Westerns, but, I think that Zelda is more versatile than what people are giving it credit for. And it's one of those things where it's like, I think it might sound ridiculous until you see it done well, and after that, it just sounds totally natural. Like, if I had told you half the stuff that happens in Breath of the Wild before Breath of the Wild came out, I think a lot of people would have kind of balked at that, right? Like, techno magic future synthwave sort of stuff, and not in my Zelda, you know. But then, of course, it happened, and it's like, well, it's Breath of the Wild. Like, I mean, what can you really say against it, you know?
Yeah. No, I think that's a good comparison. Is on paper, some of the stuff that Zelda has chosen to do is like, what? Are you joking? But generally speaking, the execution is really on point. And I think Spirit Tracks, unfortunately, is one of the few times where on paper it doesn't bother me as much, but the execution is not great. You know?
Well, and a lot of that too is that, to me, after the initial setup of like, these are the Spirit Tracks, they're keeping Malladus in place, we have a culture that is kind of revolving around this occupation of being a trained engineer. Once you sort of get past that, the table dressing of just being the trained Zelda game, it ceases to really matter in any material way other than as a mode of like conveyance, like to get you from one place to the next, right? It's not really borne out, like aside from the train situation, the rest of it is, kind of indistinguishable from most any other Zelda game, really. So I think maybe that's probably a little bit of the disappointment for me too. Like Wind Waker, going back to that one, the sailing Zelda game, like, yeah, sure, the King of Red Lions was like your mode of travel primarily, but also the entire rest of that game kind of bore out that nautical maritime sort of theme, and I'm not sure that complete immersion in the concept is something that Spirit Tracks managed to achieve at any point.
Like you would have expected there to be, there's the train smelting dungeon. We saw some evidence of that in the Goron Town, but nobody talked about it, right? You would have expected to have a dungeon where using your train in the dungeon is part of the dungeon. That certainly didn't happen. You would have expected to see NPCs driving their trains around, or like stranded because they can't drive their trains around, and that didn't really happen. Yeah, they just kind of don't really take it and run with it too much.
Yeah. It is a shame, but again, there was a very specific vision here, and I just think at its very base, I think a Zelda game without even a hint of an overworld is one that I don't know that I'll ever really be able to get completely on board with a few exceptions aside, right? Like Skyward Sword obviously has got areas that it's trying to make feel like an overworld, but they're not that exactly. But since it kind of looks since it's presented that way, it manages to trick me a little bit. And I've got other things that I like about Skyward Sword that kind of cover the gap. Four Swords Adventures, obviously, like that doesn't have an overworld at all, but it's also the party Zelda game, and like I know that going into it, so it's fine. I don't know. Looking back at Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks now, I just don't know. For Spirit Tracks especially, I kind of get why with Phantom Hourglass you just sort of need to have this whole system where it's like there is no overworld, you just have your mode of transport and it's getting you from one place to the next, right? But with Spirit Tracks, I'm just not convinced that this is a game that even needed to do away with the overworld. Like you can still have train mechanics and stuff in here, right? Have separate like chunks of the overworld, and you need to unlock new train tracks to get from one to the other, right? You don't have to make train traversal the entire thing, and I think that really did that really hurt the game a lot for me because at no point was traveling via train ever fun, right? And that's what we spent probably the most time doing. So yeah, it's a little disappointing all in all, but I do have to say though, I really do I love seeing Link in new occupations, right? And so Link as the train engineer and in that outfit and everything, I liked it. I thought it was fun and cute.
Train outfit Link is great. I almost wanted to do enough stamps to get the train outfit, but then I was like, that requires me going a lot of different places on the train, so maybe I don't want to do that. But I do agree completely that Link doing new things is fun. Smith and Sailor and train engineer, like all of those
Bird
things
pilot.
I enjoy seeing. Exactly. So there's just a lot of cool things that can happen in Link's life that are fun to be there for.
Yeah. I mean, how about you, Max? Do you think that train engineer Link is like is that just putting aside all the rest of it? Do you think that that's one of the more fun, I don't know, like occupations? Like, is that one of the more fun versions of, it's like Ken and Barbie dolls, right? It's like you've got a Ken doll that does everything, right? Do you think that's one of
Yes, this Link's whole job is train.
I'm going to go do beach today. Yeah. Exactly.
I do like train engineer Link. I would have appreciated the ability to wear that outfit throughout more of the game. And I think it's kind of hilarious how it's like train engineers are such important people in this world that they go get graduated by the sovereign of the nation.
But like, I do agree, but at the same time, also it's that's a cool addition to the lore, right? That kind of sells the importance of trains in this whole culture, right? And that was one of the things that I thought was actually the most intriguing in that first episode. But like, you never really catch up with, for instance, there's not like a train corps that you're checking in with throughout the game, right?
Yeah, you don't join the train rangers protecting the land.
And I mean, and that's something that I really could have done with as well, right? For one, this is definitely one of those Zelda games where no members of the populace, for the most part, are ever lifting really a finger to help you at all. Outside of Zelda and the Locomos who just kind of chill out in their little huts, you aren't really getting assistance from anybody in this game. I like Angine, but again, she's a Locomo. And yeah, it's like, so you're telling me that there's an entire culture based around being train engineers. And how cool would it have been to have like the Hyrule train rangers coming over the hill in the home stretch of the game, right? To help you defeat Malladus or something,
helping you against all the dark trains or something like that. Yeah.
They can appear in the last dungeon and kill 3 bokoblins
and shoot a bazooka that came out of nowhere and then is never seen again.
Yeah. And then they just chill out in the castle while you go fight Malladus. It's like, our work here is done. Yeah. But anyway, all of these are things that I think would have helped make this game more interesting to me and really deepened my connection with it. But none of it ever really materialized. And so what I'm left with here is a Link and a Zelda, a few sages, and a bad guy. And that's pretty much it, you know? And past that, it's just doing normal Zelda things in normal Zelda feeling locations. Even when it's fun, right? Like, some of these temples are fun, some of these locations are fun. Every now and again you meet a charming, fun character. But it never leaves an impact, which I think is kind of where I'm at with the plot of this game as a whole. I can see the potential, I can see the promise. It just never really amounted to much, which is a shame.
I think that's fair. I think that's a good way of summarizing it.
Let's go ahead and start having a more specific conversation about some of the main characters of this game. Matt, who do you think we should start with this time?
I mean, I think it's always the right move to start with our main squeeze, Link.
So I completely agree. I guess I'm going to go first here and say that I found this Link to be kind of middle of the pack, right? I think that this Link, to me, was definitely a lot more endearing than the version of Link that we see in Phantom Hourglass. Certainly some of the older top-down games, although it always feels a little unfair to compare newer incarnations of Link versus like Link in A Link to the Past or The Legend of Zelda, right? Because those games weren't. There wasn't even an attempt, right, to portray an actual character there. So it's probably not even a relevant part of the discussion. But this Link to me has got something that some of the best Links actually have all in common, which is that they have a good relationship with their companion character. And that's kind of portrayed within the actual game. You see instances of it. On top of that, I think that this Link kind of carries over some of the fun mannerisms and personality traits from Wind Waker Link that I do think help to kind of flesh him out just a little bit. Like there's something to grab onto there. This kind of like cheery, childlike glee incarnation of Link is fun. And as we've already said, his occupation is pretty cool, right? And getting to see him in that engineer outfit at the beginning of the game is fun. But I don't know. I think the reason that I put this Link more in the middle of the pack is that even though all those things are true, at all points in the game, he's kind of being overshadowed by his companion character, which is probably how it should be, right? Like if it's only going to be one or the other, maybe this is sacrilege, but if it's going to be one or the other, then I feel like the companion character should be the stronger one, and Link should be more of the broad strokes person. But
that's very interesting. I think just by virtue of how the games have been made, I would have to say I think the creators of Zelda would generally agree with you, which is interesting because, most games would probably say the opposite, right? Like they would say that it's more important for the main character to shine than it is for anyone else. So yeah, but I think I would have to say that Nintendo seems to agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, what are your thoughts on this, Max? Like, do you think I know that you're the kind of person who your taste generally kind of pulls you towards games that have a bit more of a blank slate Link. I know not necessarily for that reason, but is that a part of it? Like, are those versions of Link ones that appeal to you a little bit more?
So I used to be a very kind of diehard blank slate fan. Like I would have, if you'd asked me when I was kind of a less experienced game designer, I would have been like, yeah, Link should be a blank slate. Link should not be characterized. She should be an audience surrogate for the players to project themselves onto. And there should be nothing about Link that gets in the way of that. And therefore, there should be nothing about Link as a character. These days, I have a much more nuanced view. I think a good blank slate character, unless it's like a complete blank slate, like let's say you give me a character creator and my character never talks and nobody ever talks to my character, like whatever, that's a different thing. But when you're kind of presenting a character to the players to inhabit, I think it's valuable for that character to embody certain qualities or fantasies or like strengths that the players want to imagine themselves in or imagine themselves having. So I think it's actually very valuable to have like an outline of a character to kind of say like, this is the role you're going to put yourself into. And then you can take on the bravery of Link and the stoicism of Link or whatever it is that the player is imagining, because they're all going to imagine slightly different things. The older ones, the older Links, which were within their games very blank characters like Link's Awakening, Link's the Past, whatever, worked really well for me. But I realize now, years later, that part of why they worked really well is because the outline of the character was defined for me outside the game by the art and the manual and the game guides, right? So I still was presented with cool fantasy of what this Link was.
What's a manual?
In those games. Yeah. Anyways, as far as how that relates to this game, I think this Link is fine. I don't think the train conductor is as strong of a fantasy as most of the other games Links are, as like an appealing thing to put yourself into. Because train conductors don't typically in our cultures, there aren't stories about train conductors doing heroic things. There aren't stories about train conductors rescuing princesses. There aren't stories about train conductors doing much other than pulling levers on their train.
Or messing up the pulling of levers on their train.
Yeah. So like, I just feel like there isn't a lot there to carry a fantasy.
You're telling
for
me
the
that
player.
you wouldn't be here for the Zelda game in which Link starts the game as an Uber Eats driver?
Zelda Crazy Taxi.
I'd give it a shot. I don't know. But I think overall I agree with you, right? Like it's one of those things where it sounds fun and charming, but it doesn't necessarily inspire excitement, I guess is the best way to put it.
Sometimes he feels like he's the little brother following the big sister around, right? He's quiet and he's shy, and she's the one who decides what they're doing, and she's extroverted. Like, that's kind of how it feels to me when I play this game. There is an interesting element here, which is if you're supposed to project yourself into Link, is the fact that I'm a 36-year-old dude making it harder for me to see myself in this Link? I think the answer is yes. I bet if I was an 8-year-old boy, it would work better.
Well,
yeah, I think there's, I don't know. I think there's something valid there. Like, yeah, I mean, do you, I guess to that point, did you find it easier to relate to Tears of the Kingdom Link when you were playing that game recently, just because there's like a visibly older age and like, you know, like there's a completely different personality. And I know that version of Link is still, I mean, Tears of the Kingdom Link is not, 35, 36 or whatever, but
no, he's like 118, right?
Oh yeah, there you go. So yeah, did you find that you could relate to him on that basis of being
being old
118-year-old? Yeah.
I mean, that's a good question. Like, so I think the reason Spirit Tracks Link probably works better for an 8-year-old kid is less to do with the personality of Link in this game and more to do with the sort of relationships and motivations Link has. And like the sort of genuine simplicity of them. And Link in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, I think is more, it's easier for me to put myself in the shoes of the relationships that character has, because they are slightly more nuanced relationships that an adult might have.
Yeah.
The importance of that, I don't know. I feel like I'm sure lots of kids are just fine in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's still a pretty fair observation. To me, one of the things about this Link that I think makes it hard for him to make it to the top of the pile is that, as opposed to other characters in this game, this version of Link to me feels like there is no distance between Wind Waker Link and this Link. Like they could essentially be the same character with the same characterization. And if not necessarily the same motivations from a plot standpoint. But I think that is a key difference in Zelda, which we'll talk about in a second, right? Where this game's version of Zelda does not simply feel like a carbon copy of Tetra, She may look like Tetra, but definitely kind of has a personality all on her own. Thank you, babe. Hey, would you plug this in for me on my nightstand? Thank you. My hot toddy has arrived. My wife is the best. I love her.
So happy for you.
Yeah. But anyway, like I think that it's one of those things where it's hard for me to even tell. Like I'm thinking about it now, how much is one Link really all that different from another Link in the first place, right? Outside of certain exceptions, but it is something that I like. The fact that it was done with Zelda and that difference is right there for the whole game is kind of keeping it front of mind for me. So anyway, just an observation.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Well, I mean, this feels like a pretty good segue into the big conversation I feel like we're going to have here, which is our discussion about this game's version of Princess Zelda, which honestly, to me, is the great win of this game. Like, if there's any one thing that Spirit Tracks unequivocally Yes, unequivocally.
Unequivocally.
Succeeded at. It is its portrayal of Zelda as a character, both in personality and story impetus, and also just amount of time that you get to spend with her, right? Impact on every single play session that you're partaking in. Just a clear win for Spirit Tracks here. And honestly, a version of Zelda that I think has to be, at least in the conversation, up against the best incarnations of the character across the series. Where are you at with that, Matt?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think just the fact that she is such a central piece of the story, she is intricately involved, she is doing things that are like combining Zelda into the companion character was like the freaking smartest thing that whoever the game runner for this game is, whoever they are, that was the most genius thing they did in the entire game. And like frankly, it was so successful, I'm kind of surprised it didn't happen again after that. Like I thought that there was no flaw in the execution of this. Maybe that's just me, but I am that's kind of where I landed with it.
How about you, Max?
Yeah, I don't think I'm quite as glowing as you two are, but I do think this was a very successful iteration of Zelda as a character. Like, I think she was fun. I think she was peppy. I think she's in the top 30% of Zeldas. And I think it was like, I mean, this was a Zelda game where you got to control Zelda. Zelda was a playable character in Spirit Tracks, the one and only time in the series, if you ignore weird side-offs. And it was, she probably got the most screen time of any Zelda game as well. Especially if you do it as a percentage of the game, right?
Yeah.
I wish that they had doubled down even harder on her being the companion character and having her involved in other mechanics outside of the Spirit Tower. Having her talk to you more often in dungeons, like that, I kind of wish they'd done that.
Yeah, I mean, that is definitely the one area where you can criticize a little bit, right? Because most other Zelda games where you have a companion character involved, especially from like a gameplay mechanics standpoint, like they're not just kind of floating there giving you plot advice or whatever. It is something that's a little bit more present throughout the course of the game, whereas Zelda in Spirit Tracks is definitely kind of sequestered to one specific thing, you know, aside from just being the thing that you have to interact with in order to board your train when you're out in the world. But I don't know. I think it is kind of impressive, though. Like, now that I think about it, you're right. You know, the Tower of Spirits is definitely not the entirety of Spirit Tracks, and that is really the main and only place where Zelda is an impactful mechanic. But maybe it's just down to how I think the Tower of Spirits was generally successful in this game. That it's kind of like looming so large in my mind. Like, I think when I think back on Spirit Tracks as a game, I'm going to be remembering mostly my time in the Tower of Spirits and the buddy mechanic with Phantom Zelda and all the different things that you were kind of doing with that, more so than I'm going to have accurate recall of, like, I don't know, the freaking forest dungeon or whatever, you know?
You already can't remember.
Right.
What was the boss of the forest dungeon, Lyndon?
It's the beetle. Crap. It was the Stalthos beetle, right?
Stagnox.
Yeah. So there you go. I got it.
Yeah.
Anyway, but like the point stands. I think that Tower of Spirits is going to be what I remember the most, and as an extension of that, Zelda and controlling Phantom Zelda is probably going to be the thing that leaves the biggest impression on me going forward after my time with this game.
Yeah, I think I'm probably in the same boat. Other than me remembering how much I hate the overworld.
Right. Yeah, but that's just spite. That's pure unadulterated
that's
salt.
Little ember of rage that will live in me forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
I do have some quotes about Zelda as a character.
Lay them on us.
Okay, so first one is Alnuma says, back when I heard the story of Spirit Track's rough outline, I asked, what? Why isn't Tetra making an appearance? And he said, he being the director, Daiki Iwamoto, he said, well, I don't like Tetra all that much. And then everyone in the interview laughs. So I kind of interpret this one as a little bit of a joke because in another interview, here's a quote from Aonuma. First of all, Aonuma says, we received information from a survey conducted in the US that indicated that among our female characters, users had a preference for those that were more on the independent side, such as Sheik and Tetra. And then he follows that up by saying, making Zelda a more integral part of the game was also a goal specifically of our director, Mr. Iwamoto. So he's the one who is the driver behind this Zelda being characterized like this and used like this and involved in the game like this. So good on you, Iwamoto.
It's interesting. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying that was the only two I had.
Okay. I mean, it's interesting to me though, because so on the one hand, you could make an argument for the fact that this game's Zelda is not actually that much of an independent character, right? Because her circumstances basically make her completely reliant on you in order to get her body back, right? That's kind of her whole arc in this game. And a lot of her emotion and a lot of her stated, a lot of her stated trajectory in Spirit Tracks is about I want my body back. I don't like being a ghost. I have no idea what they're doing with my body. Could be anything. Let's go save it. In addition to yes, you get it's not like you get the feeling that she's in it solely for number one, right? Of course, this Zelda is also very invested in Malladus not returning, but there are a lot of little jokes and throwaway comments about her just wanting to get her body back and about how she, is kind of in a bad situation here. But at the same time, the whole situation where she inhabits the Phantom Armor and goes to battle basically with Link is a result of her wanting to have a more active role in finding a solution to this problem of finding her body, So it's kind of doing both things at once, which I think is impressive. She is both the damsel in distress that we have to rescue and also a driving force in her own narrative.
Talk about how she has a lot of agency in this game throughout this game, right? I don't feel like she's a damsel in distress basically at all. Other than a few kind of jokes at the beginning, right? Because even when she's not in a Phantom Armor, she's the one who's kind of calling the shots. It feels like Link is following her orders throughout a lot of this game.
Yeah.
And then of course, once she is in the Phantom suit, she's actively taking actions, mostly in cutscenes, because in gameplay you control her, right? But narratively, I think whenever you're giving Zelda orders, that's Zelda, the character, choosing to do those things as a equal partner of Link, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I know at the end of Minish Cap, we were having a conversation about where we thought Eslo kind of ranked versus other companion characters. And this is not a ranking that we're maintaining a list of or anything. But just off the cuff, Matt, I'm going to go to you first. Where do you think that Phantom Zelda kind of rates versus other companion characters in the Zelda series?
I think she's really, really high. And I agree. I want to go back to just what Max was saying about it doesn't feel like Zelda's a damsel in distress. And I agree with that completely. I think past the point where Anjean kind of says, hey, you're the only one that can help Link. None of us, I can't. I have to stay here. And there's nobody else that can help him. So you better go do something about that. I think Zelda from that point on just takes on a different quality than any other Zelda. And as far as being a companion character, I think she is really, really, really strong. I think she's got a lot going for her. I think she's funny. I think the interactions you have with her are good. I think the fact that she turns into like a buddy system in the Tower of Spirits gives her kind of even another leg up. So I think she's just got a lot going for her because I feel like she was just invested in a lot more, if that makes sense. And like, I think that's good. And I think that really, really benefits her as a character and the game. There's, spoiler alert, there's not a lot that I particularly like about this game, but Zelda is one of the things. Yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Max? I mean, just without having much time to prep for the question, kind of where would you put Spirit Tracks Zelda versus other companion characters? Your Navis, Tattles, Fees, etc.
Probably third or fourth.
Okay.
Like, she doesn't have a candle to Midna, but none of the other characters do. And I think I might put Tattle and King of Red Lions above her. But not any of the others.
Yeah, I think my personal ranking would probably go Midna, Tattle, King of Red Lions, Spirit Tracks Zelda, Navi, Fee, Eslo is probably what I would do, I think.
What about Linebeck?
I mean, Linebeck's not really the companion character.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the name of the companion character.
Ciela. Yeah. Ciela continues to be dead last. Sorry, Ciela.
Dead last. Yeah.
Sucks to suck. Yep. But yeah, definitely very high up there for me. So massive points. Just to kind of close this section out, would love to see this happen again in some form or fashion. Like, I do think that the constant cries of like, make Zelda playable in the next game or whatever. Like, everyone was really, really wanting Zelda to be a majorly playable character in Tears of the Kingdom. And there was a lot of discourse about that. And I tend to be kind of neither here nor there about it. I think that if you can think of a good reason and a good execution for doing that within your game, then cool, go for it. But I don't find it to be a necessary thing. But this to me kind of was just a little bit of like a very good argument for why, like, yes, it in and of itself, this is a really swell idea just on paper, and it can be accomplished. So if they ever come back around to this concept again, I hope they're looking closely at Spirit Tracks for inspiration of like, this is how this could work. This is how we could find success doing this sort of thing again. But let's go ahead and move on to our discussion of this game's main enemy, which is Malladus. And Matt, I'm going to send this over to you first. I don't think this is going to be a very long one, but for the purposes of the conversation, go ahead and I guess you can include Cole in here as well. But
sure.
How do you feel about the Malladus Cole duo?
I have little to no feelings. I think that it was marginally better than Bellum, and I say that with a heavy emphasis on marginally. And I think that his design is dumb, like as far as what he looks like in his little spirit head form looks really dumb. And then when he becomes like Beast Malladus or whatever, like, fine, sure. Yeah, I don't know, man. Like, a big part of it is that it just wasn't fleshed out at all. Like, there was nothing going for any of these characters that like helped me feel any kind of way about them. So yeah, I just never really cared.
Yeah,
outside of like, we don't want bad guys to win.
Sure, right. That's the thing. Like, there's never any impetus, and like, there's never any reason for us to get invested in this outside of just like, Malladus sure is a bad guy. Be pretty awful if he came back, you know?
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. And I do agree, too. Like, some of this is just in the portrayal, right? We never, for instance, like, we never really got a sufficient reason for why Chancellor Cole was working for Malladus and wanting him to come back. We never even got a great answer for what Chancellor Cole even is necessarily, you know?
Right.
What was he at the end of the game? He wasn't a Locomo. He wasn't a human. Like, what's his deal?
He's a demon serving the Demon King, just like Girahim.
Okay, yeah, I guess.
My interpretation, at least.
Yeah. But even Girahim, I mean, like, you know, we got like a very cool answer at the end of the day of what is Girahim, you know? Girahim is Negafi, and that's a really cool answer to that question. But yeah, with Cole, we really got nothing. And then once Malladus actually shows up on the scene, I think his beast mode version looks pretty cool. But you're definitely right, Matt. I mean, like Andros, like turquoise Andros head Malladus is goofy as shit. And the Demon Train similarly is, I don't want to say goofy, but I don't know. Definitely something. Like, am I the only one who thinks the Demon Train looks like it came out of Tron? Like if Tron had trains?
I think that's totally fair.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could see it a little bit. Like I could imagine him on glowing blue grid lines.
Yeah.
But
I'm talking OG Tron, by the way. To me, Demon Train's face looks like the Master Control program in OG Tron.
That's funny.
Anyway,
Malladus's best and coolest and most memorable form is, evil haunted Zelda corpse when he was possessing Zelda's body.
Yeah.
Like if they had focused on that as like, your bad guy is demon, like Ghost Girl Zelda. Like she's haunting, the hotel in The Shining Zelda.
I agree. I think that would have been a much stronger way to play this. Like, I think that in some ways the final boss fight situation was taking a lot of cues from how this was handled in Twilight Princess, which was a pretty recent game when this came out. But when you think about it, it's got all the same things, right? You've got your beast form, Ganon. You've got the phase of the fight where you're on a mode of transportation, right? And then you've also got possessed Zelda phase of the fight. And I don't know if they were drawing those lines quite as clearly as I'm laying them out here, but it makes me wonder, like, what is the fear of just having possessed Zelda be the final boss fight? Right? Why shy away from that? Because to me, that sort of feels like something that would have you on edge the entire time. Like as the player who's spent the entire game with Zelda, being in this massive boss fight where you're basically just doing combat with the body of Zelda, which Zelda has been like one of the things that we're supposed to have been emotionally invested in this whole game, was in this quest to reunite Zelda with her body, right? And now we're at the very end of the game, and it could be putting you in this situation where it's like, now it's bigger than that, right? Like, yes, we want Zelda to get her body back, but we may not be able to accomplish that. The primary goal is to defeat this monster that's inside of it, and if that's what we have to do, then that's what we have to do. Like, I think there could be a really fun narrative tension there, which is something that it just sort of completely shies away from in favor of having a few kind of big set piece battles after you're finally done with the possessed Zelda section.
Yeah, I think that this is kind of true of the Zelda series in general, is they shy away from some of those things that would be considered like a lot harder to deal with, or a lot harsher realities, like dealing with permanent loss, or, other like dark, and not even necessarily dark, but like super adult themes. And I don't know that that's bad necessarily, but it does get you to a point where you miss out on some what could be really big emotionally impactful things, like Midna remaining dead after sacrificing herself to Ganondorf in Twilight Princess, or Zelda remaining a dragon in Tears of the Kingdom, or, you know, it's stuff like that.
And here Link's Awakening is the exception that proves the rule.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of Zelda games that end with a goodbye. Not a lot that end with a main character death. Not any that I can think of.
Yeah.
Oh, unless you count Daphne's.
Oh, that's a good point. Daphne's does bite the farm.
He buys the farm and bites the dust.
Yes. Yeah. No,
you mixed your metaphors there.
I did. I did.
He bites the farm.
Look, man, I
like that.
Very sleep deprived from all the wedding planning and work pickup and double recording. So, like, give me a break.
It's okay. At work today, while trying to use the word harmonious, I instead typed the word farmonious. And so I'm hanging on to that in the event that we ever change Destiny 2 to be a farming simulator. Farmonious, I think, is going to need to be one of the main pillars of the design philosophy there. It's a good word. I'm going to keep it. But anyway, no judgment, Matt. But yeah, no, I agree with where we're all at with this. And I mean, it's a very small nitpick, you know. I think Zelda is still very successful outside of all of these constraints. Malladus, not so much, right? Malladus just never really got to a place where I cared one way or another. It's not like I hate Malladus either. I think, Matt, you said it best, like, you feel no specific way about it, which in some ways is even worse than outright loving or outright hating a thing, you know? Yeah. It's like you kind of had no opinion, right? It's like it's a thing that happened, and past that, nothing really to say about it. So unfortunate. I think the strongest aspect of Malladus's whole situation to me is that baseline lore, which is in the very, very far past. He tried to take over the world and was sealed under the ground using train tracks as his bonds, basically. And to me, that was the coolest part of his whole deal. Like that just as like a line of story is like, okay, that's cool. That's pretty neat.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think his backstory was more interesting than his character.
Yeah. Do we have anything else that we want to say about Malladus before we move on from here?
I think it's disappointing how much his beast form just feels like a Ganon fight.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I got there.
Yep. Agreed.
For a long time, for years and years and years, I thought the train, because I saw art of the train, was Malladus. It's the demon train. And I kind of feel like they should have just made the train actually be Malladus in his train form. Because it's got a more memorable design than the rest of them.
Yeah. I'm actually kind of confused about this. Like, so we're led to believe that trains became a thing in Hyrule because we had these tracks all over the surface, right? Which were binding Malladus under the ground. And so, like, of course, people found a way to, like, utilize those for transit. Makes sense. So if that's the case, then why does Malladus himself have a train?
I think trains came from the Locomos, and the Locomos are servants of the good spirits. So Malladus created an evil version of that.
Okay. I mean, all right. Sure. To me, this never made much more sense than just like, look, I'm a bad guy and I've got a bad looking train. Choo-choo. But whatever. Maybe I was just looking for too much here. But I do think the demon train is goofy and fun and whatever. Like I agree with you, Max. Like Malladus kind of like being just a very bad train was probably a better way to do this at the end of the day. But coulda, shoulda, woulda. Honestly, like we've talked so much this season about how we never really spent all that much time interacting with other characters, right? seeking out side quests and bloopy trails and stuff like that. It just wasn't something that happened much for us. We usually do like a bloopy not bloopy trail. We usually do a Z targeting of the season in this section. But I think that I might actually struggle to come up with one. Does anything come to mind for you, Matt?
I don't have one. I think the most interesting thing I heard about Z targeting was Max. I think it was you who said you went to the pirate island with where all the people were missing and everything. Like, I kind of wish I had gotten to experience that, but in order to experience that, I would have had to engage with the train mechanic a lot more, and I am just not willing to do that. So,
yes, that would be my choice for Bloopy Trails. Is that side quest because it had a really fun mini game. And it had an interesting enough like narrative, hook that I was curious, which is the only time I felt curiosity about a side quest in this game. So that's my choice for Bloopy Trail.
But I mean, what about Z targeting? Do we truly believe that there was any named character in this game aside from the core cast of Zelda, Link, etc., that deserves mention here? Like, I mean, in Minish Cap, we had a lot of options, in most Zelda games, you would have a lot of like a pretty deep roster of side characters, like in Twilight Princess with this question, I would have to spend a minute thinking like, I don't know, do I like Mallow more than, Renato or whatever, like Ashe or Russell, and I can think, I have all those people's names. I know those characters, and I can weigh the pros and cons. I don't think Spirit Tracks ever really gave me anybody who would even be a part of the conversation. Outside of probably Burn. Yeah.
But he's main cast. Not as main as the big three, but I guess there's like, what's his name? Other engineer,
Ferris,
who looks like a pirate.
No,
Alfonso?
Alfonso.
Yeah, Alfonso, your mentor or whatever. Yeah,
like he's kind of cool. He seems like he's going to be important in that first opening,
and then wasn't.
Not. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. He never showed up again. After you get the canon, you never see Alfonso again.
Yeah, unless you change out your train parts. Like if you buy train parts and want to change them out, he's the one that does that.
He literally had a sword fight with like the mid-game climax villain, right?
Yeah.
Like that's cool. We never see we didn't see anyone go toe to toe with Aghanim or Girahim or what's his face from Twilight Princess.
How awesome! How much more awesome would the story of A Link to the Past have been if Flute Boy tried to do battle with Aghanim?
Just wizard battle. His flute against Aghanim's magic.
Right, exactly. I'd have been here for it.
Yeah, no doubt.
So he did a heroic thing and lost and was our mentor and has a cool past where he used to be the captain of the guard, and I guess we never saw him again.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to go with Ferris for being a hobbyist, which I can relate to.
Yeah.
It's good to have hobbies.
I guess I will go with I'll go with Alfonso for doing battle with Burn. Like that's just a badass move. Like go you, buddy. It's super cool.
Yeah. Okay. Good pick. I mean, only picks really, but whatever. Real quick before we get out of our discussion about the plot, I know we said we were going to talk a bit about this game's final dungeon, which is a difficult conversation, I know, because the final dungeon is basically just more floors of the Tower of Spirits. But since Phantom Hourglass is on this ranking and it has even less of a final dungeon situation, I feel like we just have to bring it up. So we're going to do this part really, really quick. The final dungeon ranking as it currently stands is as thus. Number 11 is Phantom Hourglass, Temple of the Ocean King. Number 10 is Link's Awakening, The Windfish's Egg, which isn't even a dungeon at all. Number 9 is The Adventure of Link, The Great Palace. Number 8 is Ocarina of Time, Ganon's Castle. Number 7 is Twilight Princess, Hyrule Castle. Number 6 is The Legend of Zelda, Death Mountain. Number 5 is Skyward Sword, The Sky Keep. Number 4 is the Wind Waker, which was, again, Ganon's Castle. These numbers are out of order. I have number 4 listed twice. So number 5 was Wind Waker. Number 4 is Minish Cap, Dark Hyrule Castle. Number 3 is Link to the Past, Ganon's Tower. Number 2 is A Link Between Worlds, Lorule Castle. Number 1 is Breath of the Wild, Hyrule Castle. So does anyone want to take a stab at where the final floors of the Tower of Spirits land on this list?
I would say it's better than Temple of the Ocean King, but not better than really much else. No, that's not true. I would say it's above Windfish's Egg.
So you're saying below Great Palace, above Windfish's Egg?
I think so.
See, my thing is, I don't necessarily know. I don't know about that. I think, again, going back to it, pretty much every week in the Tower of Spirits was really good, except for the 1 week where the illumination was the main mechanic. The final week had a bit of a length issue. Actually, it had a lot of a
length issue, yeah.
It was just very, very, very long. It took forever. But it was it was all good. It was all good Tower of Spirits puzzles. None of it sucked, It's just it just took forever.
Yes.
So that makes this a little difficult for me. I'm going to put it above Great Palace and below Ocarina of Time. I think that's probably where it belongs.
I think that makes sense.
Max, how do you feel? And I know we didn't even actually have you on last week to talk about the final Tower of Spirits floors. So
yeah. We don't need to get too deep into it, but I found it really unenjoyable and frustrating. I wanted it to be over from once I was 5 minutes into it. I was just like, I'm tired of this. This isn't enjoyable. Same atmosphere as all the previous floors. I think the clunky slowness of just having to control the Phantom all the time really wore me down. I only enjoyed this Tower of Spirits for the first 2 visits. So I would personally rank it above Ocean King and below Windfish's Egg.
Man, even though Windfish's Egg isn't even anything, right?
The key is those few rooms of the Windfish's Egg have strong vibes and atmosphere and his overall positive experience, whereas I consider this to be overall a negative experience.
Okay, interesting. I think we have kind of a base disparity between your overall thoughts on Tower of Spirits as a concept versus Matt's and mine. But fair. I think, I don't know. Matt, this is why we have...
I'm voting with you on it, Lyndon. I think it goes above Great Palace, below the other one. I really think the Tower of Spirits was overall good, but it really overstayed its welcome on this last week. And
specifically in this last chunk.
Yeah,
cool. Yep, that sounds good. And let's be honest, we're still we're still really far down the list here. There are a solid crop of mediocre options above this one before we actually get to the good stuff. So it is what it is. But okay, sounds good. So it comes in now at number 10 under Ocarina of Time. Alrighty, I think that's all we have for the plot, unless anybody else has any observation that they're dying to make.
I don't. I'm good.
Okay, cool. Well, with that being said, then let's go ahead and move on to part 2, which is Best Dungeon in Spirit Tracks. And Max, I'm going to let you go first because I know you kind of already rendered judgment on this.
Oh yeah,
in the episode that you were on, but
the Sand Temple.
Okay, cool.
I waxed very eloquent about that in that episode, so I'm just gonna reiterate everything I said there. I think it is not only the strongest dungeon in this game, but a very strong dungeon overall in the series.
Yeah, broken up over 9 separate MP3 recordings. Yes, you waxed poetic about the about the Sand Temple. Good times. No, yeah, but all of your points are totally valid, and like, especially re-listening to the episode while I was editing it yesterday, I agree with basically all your points. Sand Temple is a super, super strong dungeon. Do you want to give us a quick elevator pitch on why you think that is? Just obviously without, like we just talked about it 2 weeks ago, but just for the sake of this episode, give us a quick little rundown.
Yeah, basically, I think it has all the elements a good Zelda dungeon needs, where you experience the dungeon for a while before you get the item. You get the item and it recontextualizes how you look at everything, which is like always the key to a good Zelda dungeon in my mind. And then on top of that, it kind of hits on all cylinders in a way where each element of the dungeon reinforces the theme together to make it hit kind of much, much higher than ones where they aren't like multiplying each other like that. So it's stuff like, the item fit the theme, the music was good, the layout felt like a place. The puzzles were interesting. They made me think in new ways. And the boss was awesome. Like, it kind of just was all there. I think it's the highlight of this game. I think it's the best part of this entire game. It's the Sand Temple. Okay.
Excellent praise then. Glowing review of the Sand Temple. Matt, I'm going to send it over to you. What do you think was the best dungeon in this game?
Yeah, I think there's a really strong case to be made for the Sand Temple, obviously, because I do pretty much agree with everything Max just said. I also happened to really like the Fire Temple, and I'm having a hard time deciding between the two. I think both of those dungeons were really good. I think, I'm trying to remember, Sand Temple boss was also really good. I really liked the Fire Temple boss. Man, I think both of them were very, very good. I am probably going to give it to the Fire Temple. Yeah. First thought, best thought.
Okay.
Fire Temple, because, look, obviously that was very difficult decision, but like I really liked the mine carts. I thought that was cool. I always liked the bow and arrow. I thought the sand rod was really great, but its lack of utility in combat is limiting a bit. And Kragma was a really fun boss fight that I enjoyed thoroughly, along with using the mine carts that were also fun. So like it just had a lot of things that were really fun, in my opinion, that worked well.
So I don't know that this has ever happened before, but the 3 members of this recap episode all have 3 different opinions about what the best dungeon in this game was.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Crazy, but here we are. My vote is actually going to go to the Snow Temple.
Okay.
Huh.
Which, the more that I think about it, I think that the Snow Temple probably had the best overall use of its main mechanic out of any of the dungeons in the game, which was the utilization of both fire and ice with the boomerang, right? Having to do both things within the temple, especially once you got to puzzles where you're having to create like ice pathways over water with the boomerang. I thought that was such a great evolution of the way that item was used in Phantom Hourglass. And it really, really impressed me. And on top of that, the Snow Temple has a lot of, to me, it had a lot of fun atmosphere. I really liked the puzzles where you have to play music on the bells of different sizes. I thought that was actually like a really fun little mechanic. And definitely the superior execution of a musical mechanic in this game versus the one that you spend most of your time having to screw around with. Freaking flute. But yeah, and then on top of that, it has what was to me the most fun boss fight in the entire game, which was the fight with Froz, which didn't like leverage perspective in quite the same impressive way that Skeldritch and Kragma did. But to me was still just a really fun boss fight where it's like it starts at level like 1 and then progresses to be more and more difficult with slight variations on the main mechanic throughout the entire fight. All culminating in, just kind of dialing it to 10, right? And you just have to be paying attention the whole time. It was really good. I enjoyed it quite a lot. So, yeah, Snow Temple gets my vote this time around.
Would you two agree with the thought that dungeons are a high point of this game? Just like they were for Phantom Hourglass?
Yes, I think so. I will say that I think I still feel that Phantom Hourglass's dungeon items are better as a whole than Spirit Tracks. Yeah. But I do think that Spirit Tracks was a notable improvement over Phantom Hourglass in the realm of dungeons feeling like atmospheric places. Like, that was one of my biggest criticisms of Phantom Hourglass, was that the dungeons all just sort of felt like, with the exception of Muto's temple, they all just sort of felt like caves, right? Like ocean caves. And Spirit Tracks definitely kind of makes an effort to dress them up a little bit and to really make you feel like this is the Snow Temple, the Fire Temple, Sand Temple, whatever. And that goes a long way for me. Even the Snow Temple, in the Snow Temple episode, I was talking a lot about how the layout of that dungeon felt much more traditional Zelda dungeon layout, right? Like, it had like a central area with wings off to the right and left, and a lot of the other dungeons kind of just feel a little haphazard in their arrangement. It's a small thing, but like I do notice it. So, but yeah, overall, I really do like the dungeons in this game. And a second ago, I was kind of trying to think, like, I don't know, where like Spirit Tracks' convention of doing dungeons, like how much do I like that versus other Zelda games? And the answer is probably not much, right? Like, I still think most other Zelda games are doing dungeons better than this. Phantom Hourglass is not. But the one that keeps popping up in my mind is A Link Between Worlds, right? And just to be clear, I do still think that A Link Between Worlds has better dungeons overall than Spirit Tracks, if for no other reason than because, one, they all have very distinctive aesthetics and all that, but there's just more of them and they're all pretty good. But what Spirit Tracks does do a lot, what it does manage to do a lot, is the whole situation where it gives you the item and the item recontextualizes the dungeon. And A Link Between Worlds' dungeons to me are always going to be like, my analysis of them is always going to fall under the shadow of like, well, as fun as they are, they never have that, kind of hard to get around for me.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, your nostalgia is your nostalgia, but I happen to agree with you. I think that, talking about the dungeons in this game, I think that the dungeons are a high point. I don't think that these dungeons like break into, for the most part, I don't think they like break into the realm of great very frequently. Like, I don't know. I think their hit to miss ratio is fairly good. I thought the Forest Temple was not good. I thought the Snow Temple was fine. I feel like it was on a gradual upward curve with the Fire Temple and Sand Temple being on a level. Yeah, I don't know. They were good, but again, just dragged down, generally speaking, by the game around them, I guess, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and to be clear, I don't think anyone here is arguing that these Spirit Tracks dungeons are necessarily going toe-to-toe with like Twilight Princess or Skyward Sword or Ocarina of Time or any of that, right?
Sure.
I mean, like, it's like basically the entire conversation of Spirit Tracks is just us trying to figure out, spoilers for the rank and recap later, we're just trying to figure out where this game lands versus Phantom Hourglass, basically, right?
Right.
So the entire conversation is kind of coming from that perspective, right? And then, of course, there are other Zelda games where it's not even necessarily fair to compare these experiences to those, right? Like you can't compare the dungeon situation in Zelda 2 to Spirit Tracks, right? Because it's a completely different situation. They're going for totally different things, but yeah. But I guess if the question, Max, is did I have fun in Spirit Tracks dungeons, then my answer has to be, with the exception of the Forest Temple, yes, I had fun in Spirit Tracks' dungeons. So,
agree with that sentiment. Yes.
Cool. All right, let's go ahead and move on to part 3, which is best item in the game. And Matt, I'm going to let you go first on this one. I think you and I are both in complete agreement that this overall is a category where Spirit Tracks is really lagging behind its predecessor.
I totally agree. I think that the best item in this game is definitely the whirlwind. It's for sure the best. No, obviously,
you had me in the first half, not gonna lie.
Obviously, I don't think that. The items in this game, I don't think are super great. Like the whip was, in my opinion, not as good as the
grapple or whatever.
Thank you, grapple. Yeah, grapple. I think you're right. I think it's grapple. And obviously the whirlwind is the worst item that's ever been in any Zelda game ever. The bow is exactly the same, so it doesn't really get any points for that. There's just stuff that doesn't really, I don't know. It just doesn't work super well in my opinion. Like, I don't know. The items are at best fine. So is kind of where I'm coming at it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and so of trying to pick a winner amongst mediocre options, which one is it for you?
Bow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Hard to go wrong.
Yeah, the bow, mostly because, and I'll say this, mostly because the little redirectors I think are crazy cool. I like those a lot.
Well, and they get a lot more play in this game. Like the ability to move them around and to place them wherever you want is kind of a big boon to this whole situation. So totally agree with you there. And look, I do think that the Phantom Hourglass / Spirit Tracks bow is one of the more fun bows to use just in general. Like point to shoot is kind of great with this sort of item. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Max, gonna send it over to you next. And before you answer the question of what your favorite item in the game was, are you in agreement with Matt and I that the whirlwind is the worst item to ever appear in any Zelda game?
I think it is the uncontested worst Zelda game of all time. The worst Zelda item of all time. Sorry, it's not game.
You had a Freudian slip there.
No, it is the uncontested worst Zelda item of all time, unless we count the pan flute as an item.
For
the purposes of this discussion, we do not.
Okay, then it's the whirlwind.
Okay.
I have a hard time picking between the boomerang and the sand rod as my favorite item from this game, because they're both items that are completely impossible to do in this way in a non-touchscreen Zelda game, right? They really take advantage of the unique interface of this game, and they're both enjoyable to use. The boomerang, they both have this cool thing where you're sort of like drawing the terrain. Like with the boomerang, you do it with ice and water. And there's a few places you're melting stuff, and you're kind of like drawing the paths that you can then walk through. And honestly, the sand rod does the same thing, but it's in sand. So I guess I just like that. I'll pick the boomerang.
Okay. I am actually also going to go boomerang. for a lot of the reasons that I was mentioning in my discussion around favorite dungeon, right? I think the boomerang actually functioning as a stand-in for the fire and ice arrows is just really clever. And same as you, Max, I just think the process of like controlling it is a lot of fun. And I still do maintain that even though touchscreen, like stylus controls in a Zelda game are pretty much my least favorite flavor of Zelda ever, I do think the one area where they really do shine is in the ability to give you granular control over some of these items, right? And it's one of the reasons that I like the bomb chews so freaking much in Phantom Hourglass, right? Like in any other game, bomb chews suck, but in Phantom Hourglass, they're a ton of fun, right? Because they basically just become little drones that you can send wherever. It's great. And yeah, so it's the boomerang for me just because of the fun evolution on what it did in Phantom Hourglass. It's an item that remained useful throughout the whole game. Like I was using it a lot throughout the entire game. And it was also it had some very unique play in its dungeon. So those two things together, I think, rate it pretty highly in my book. Still not as crazy cool as Link's Awakening's boomerang, which is basically just like the nuclear option of Zelda items, like destroys everything. But yeah, cool. All right, well then let's go ahead and get into part 4, which is the best music in Spirit Tracks, which is an area where I think we could actually have a little bit of conversation. I actually think it might be best if we all just say, unless somebody disagrees, can we all just agree that the overworld theme is the best piece of music in the game and then move forward with the discussion from the standpoint of like, yes, we know that. What's the second best?
I think that's fair, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Overworld for sure.
Yeah. It's such a great overworld theme. It's a whole bop. I never get tired of listening to it. It might be one of my top 5 favorite pieces of Zelda music of all time. Like it's just a really, really, really good theme. And yeah, it's everything else is kind of a distant second, but there's no denying that Spirit Tracks does have a pretty good suite of music to fall back on after that. So Matt, I'm going to go to you first. If it's not the overworld theme, then what is it?
I think I'll go with the boss theme that plays for both Kragma and the Sand Temple boss, whatever its name was, because they shared a boss theme, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was nice and hectic and upbeat and fitting for a boss theme. So I think I'm going to go with that one.
So Kragma actually shares a boss theme with Froz.
Oh, is that who it is? Okay, yeah. Well, that one.
Okay, Skeldritch uses a different one, which I can't think of off the top of my head, but yeah. I am actually also going with the Froz boss fight music as my option. I really, really enjoy it. It's just like kind of a fun, like it's a piece of music that sort of takes you on a ride a little bit. And it's great setting for a boss fight, but I think it's a really great piece of music, and to me, it sort of definitely belongs alongside, the Mulgara theme, the Ocarina of Time, Volvagia / King Dodongo, bum 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 bum. I like it. I like it a lot. How about you, Max? What's playing for second here?
So I have to be completely honest. Almost no music from this game stands out to me as like something I remember. Other than the overworld theme. Overworld theme, awesome. Everything else, at least it's better than Phantom Hourglass's soundtrack. And the two of you talking so glowingly about the boss themes, like it almost makes me feel bad because I don't remember. None of the boss themes made an impression on me, and I should probably go back and listen to them again.
Well, here, you know what? I have a high degree of confidence that you're going to like this. So, Max, why don't you take 2 seconds, take 30 seconds, just Google Froz boss theme, listen to it real fast, tell us what you think.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't actually like the Fraz boss theme.
Oh no.
There is one track other than the overworld theme that I have always loved from Spirit Tracks, and it's called "Before the Final Battle" in the soundtrack, and I think it's like that conversation that Link and Zelda have with Angine and Byrne, where like the two Locomos are trying to volunteer to come along, and like they're all proud of how the kids grew up and stuff. And it's the same melody as the main theme. So maybe this is cheating, but it's, much more slowed down, kind of subdued, but optimistic version of it. It's really good.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, good pick. To that point, I also do really like just the Tower of Spirits music, which I think it's technically Angine's theme, but I've been using it as the Tower of Spirits music and the plot recaps all season just because I like it. But anyway.
I mean, that's also fair. Yeah.
Sure. But anyway, good pick, Max. All right, that brings us to the end of that section. Part 5 is Best Bloopy Trail, which, look, again, Max, you've got one. You went to the Pirate Fortress, right?
Yep.
Cool.
It's kind of all there is to say about it, but yes.
And I think Matt and I
Pirate Fortress, which is something neither Lyndon nor I did.
Yeah. And I think, Matt, you and I, we've got bunnies, right? Do we have anything besides bunnies?
I did the knock 'em down game. So I'm going to give it to the knock 'em down game because one thing that Stylus Controls really does have going for them is combat is at least fast-paced and semi-interesting. Emphasis on semi.
Your glowing recommendation is overwhelming me.
Did either of you play the Goron train cannon minigame?
No, but that sounds really cool.
Because that is the second best minigame in this game. The other shooting minigame, and it's really fun.
Man. I'm over here thinking maybe we should have done more stuff in this game, Matt. But at the same time, I'm kind of thinking probably better that we didn't.
Yeah, no, I'm good with where we ended up.
Yeah, which is sad to me. Like I've never felt that way about any other Zelda game ever. Like usually I like to get a little taste of everything, but the process of actually acquiring that in Spirit Tracks just not worth it. Sorry to say.
No, not worth it.
All right. Well, that brings us to part 6, which is our final thoughts and ranking. This is the big tamale. This is where we decide just how low on our list Spirit Tracks actually lands. So just to reiterate, the ranking as it currently stands is as thus. Number 12 is The Adventure of Link. Number 11 is Phantom Hourglass. Number 10 is The Legend of Zelda. Number 9 is Twilight Princess. Number 8 is A Link to the Past. Number 7 is A Link Between Worlds. Number 6 is The Minish Cap. Number 5 is A Link's Awakening. Number 4, Wind Waker. Number 3, Skyward Sword. Number 2, Ocarina of Time. Number 1, Breath of the Wild. And just to reiterate, as much as it might pain all of us, the placement of The Adventure of Link on this list currently is inviolable. For the purposes of this episode, Adventure of Link has to stay where it is. You are certainly free to rank Spirit Tracks beneath it, but you just have to remember that means you're putting Phantom Hourglass 2 spaces above Spirit Tracks, if that is your decision. So the way that we're going to do this is I am going to read the games in order from top to bottom. Matt and Max and myself, if you think that Spirit Tracks is better than the game that I name, you say aye. If not, you say nay. As soon as we have 2 nays, that's where Spirit Tracks lays on the list. So let's start at the very bottom. Matt and Max, do you think Spirit Tracks is better than The Adventure of Link?
Nay.
I mean, okay, it doesn't even matter now. Okay, so Nay, for me. But this is the problem. I do think it is better than Phantom Hourglass. So, like, for the purposes of the ranking, we now know Spirit Tracks at number 13, dead last, right? It's not going to matter, but is Spirit Tracks better than Phantom Hourglass, Matt?
I do think it is slightly better than Phantom Hourglass, like ever so slightly.
Okay. Max, how about you?
Nay, I do not. I think Spirit Tracks is the worst Zelda game.
Wow.
Ooh,
Okay.
All right. Interesting.
All right.
I'm
Cool.
interested to hear why.
There's basically three big reasons. The first one is the pan flute. The pan flute is just so excruciatingly bad that it kind of undoes any potential positives this game has. It's so awful. And the second thing is I really don't like the overworld. It's my least favorite overworld of the series. And then the third thing is I don't think any of the characters in the world have emotional impetus, like emotional hooks to them or their side stories. And all three of those things are worse than anything in Phantom Hourglass, I think.
Okay. Fair enough. You know, the way this is panning out, it really is probably best that we're having Max on this episode instead of the detective, because the detective also did not play The Adventure of Link, right? And so, right, like now we're just we're keeping the knowledge of what these games all have to give us squarely in mind. So, yeah, I think for me the reasons that Spirit Tracks kind of edges out Phantom Hourglass are one. I do, as boring as it is, I do still like the train better than the boat. I just do. I do think that the dungeons overall are better in Spirit Tracks than Phantom Hourglass. And I do think that the Temple of the Ocean King was such a freaking drag. Like, awful. Just, the Temple of the Ocean King might be the least fun that I've ever had for a prolonged period of time in a Zelda game. And to me, the great triumph of Spirit Tracks after the way it treated Zelda was that it managed to take that kind of concept of a thing and turn it around and make it into something that I actually personally enjoyed. Like, to me, that was an impressive switcheroo that it pulled on me.
I think that's fair, and I think the Temple of the Ocean King is the main reason that I say that Spirit Tracks is slightly better than Phantom Hourglass. And look, like, the pan flute makes me want to reverse that decision, but then I have to rethink about the amount of time I spent between those two things, and the amount of time I spent on Temple of the Ocean King is far and above more than the pan flute. And like that, I think, is the main reason that I have to put Spirit Tracks as being better than Phantom Hourglass. For the record, I thought that Phantom Hourglass was worse than Adventure of Link also. So I'm still at least remaining consistent in my rankings. But yeah, like I think that's kind of the reason that I land where I do.
Wait, no,
on it.
you thought Adventure of Link. Oh, never mind. You said
I said
it
it right.
the
Yeah.
first time. Okay. Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah. Okay. That sounds good. I mean, here's the thing. At the end of the day, I feel like The Adventure of Link has been more wronged in our ranking. Like I feel more strongly about The Adventure of Link's superiority versus Spirit Tracks than I care about whether or not Spirit Tracks is better than Phantom Hourglass. So I'm fine with this. I'm fine with this ranking. Like it's okay. Like, and I know a lot of people do consider Spirit Tracks to be very bottom of the barrel for all the same reasons that you just mentioned, Max. And yeah, it's hard to argue with those points. So I guess, do you like, knowing that, yes, pan flute sucks, train sucks, all those things, Max, do you feel at the very least that Tower of Spirits maybe got a little close to putting it over the top of Phantom Hourglass? Like, was there ever a world where it was like, yeah, you know what, this main mechanic of the game was this much better in Spirit Tracks versus Phantom Hourglass, and that maybe is worth some consideration?
Ultimately, I mean, I do think the Spirit Tower is better and more enjoyable than Temple of the Ocean King. But I don't think that was ever a big enough factor for me to come close to rating this above Phantom Hourglass.
Okay, cool. Yep, fair enough. You know, it's you have very well articulated points for that opinion. So hard to argue. Yeah. And like I said, it's not a fight that I feel like fighting, because I just at the end of the day did not love this game. I don't even know that I really liked it. So wait, you got a yay or a nay from Matt and I about PH versus Spirit Tracks. Where do you fall, Lyndon? Oh, I think Spirit Tracks is better than Phantom Hourglass, just by a very marginal amount. I mean, like, almost negligible, but it, like, the things that I like in Zelda games, Spirit Tracks manages to do them just a little bit better than Phantom Hourglass. And so, yeah, it edges it out just by a little bit. But I mean, you know, I still, there's no world where I would have considered putting it anywhere above these bottom like 2 or 3 positions. Like, it's just not my thing. At the end of the day, I had such a hard time mustering the will to continue forward. And Phantom Hourglass was kind of the same way, right? Like, I think that this style of Zelda game is just not for me.
Yeah, I think that I land exactly the same place. I've never felt this way about a Zelda game, even Adventure of Link. Like, as hard as Adventure of Link was, I still went and played it, and I still explored around the limited capacity that I could. I still tried to max out my level. Like, I still did all of those things willingly. And, like, I don't want to say that I was dreading playing this game, but it was somewhere close to. And I just didn't want to. I had no interest in playing this game at all.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good point, Matt. We truly did engage with basically everything that Adventure of Link had to offer, right? And we did it willingly. Like, we went with it. We were there for the ride. You know, we would still, on balance, we still probably would rather be playing A Link to the Past or something, you know? But it was fine. Like, we enjoyed it for what it was, knowing that it had the limitations that it did. And, you know, I think with Phantom Hourglass, I described it as, like, at the end of the day, you can really feel that it's like bottom shelf B-team Zelda. It just, like, it has none of those excuses to fall back on. It's not like it's a game that was made in the 80s, you know, or the early 90s even. Like, it has such a wealth of successful Zelda before it to draw from. Right. And,
it stood out as the bottom of the series the day it came out. Like, to me at least, like, it was there was no reason to give it any grace because, oh, it's aged badly or they hadn't figured it out yet. You're completely right.
So, anyway, we hate to say it, but you know what? The silver lining here is that we are on to bigger and better things as of this very moment. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the Sacred Realms recap. We will do this all again at the end of the coming mini season, because we will be ranking and reviewing Four Swords Adventures against the rest of the list. I mean, we played it, so we might as well. So we'll be back here. We'll be back here again doing that before too very long. And then after that, we'll be moving on to another 3D game, which as of this moment is looking like Majora's Mask. And God help me, I can't wait. Oh, God, I can't wait.
I know. I'm so excited for that game.
Man.
I just spent $150 to get, like, a fancy converter so I can play my N64 on a modern TV.
Oh, so you, much like my co-host Matt, are I guess not a Majora's Mask 3D enjoyer versus the Nintendo 64 version?
I've never played the 3DS version, and I probably should play it just so I can see it. But, like, I've heard so many things about what's changed in it, and I'd just rather experience the originals.
Well,
the other thing, of course, is my wife has told me she wants to watch when I play Majora's Mask. So no handheld.
Okay, that's fair. I would highly recommend you play the 3DS version at some point. Like Matt's got some things that he dislikes about it versus the other one. They're not things that bother me, really. I do think Majora's Mask 3D is the superior version for a few different reasons, but we can talk about all of that when we actually get around to a season where we're playing it. But anyway, time to close the book on Spirit Tracks. Good riddance. I will probably never play you again. Yeah.
I know for a fact I will never play it again, and we need to send the copies back to the people who loaned them to us anyway.
We do. Barring some crazy remaster situation, which I just don't see being in the cards. Yeah.
That would be hilarious if they announced the Spirit Tracks remaster of all things.
I know, right?
The internet would melt down.
Everyone's wanting Twilight Princess HD and Wind Waker HD to come on Switch, and instead we get Phantom Hourglass and a Spirit Tracks double remaster. Like, what? Okay. I would be here for it. I would give it a shot. I would give it an honest shot.
I should say, with this completion of Spirit Tracks, I have finally completed every mainline Zelda game.
Hey, good for you.
Thanks for making me do it.
I'm glad we could at least give you the reason to truck forward and to knock that out. Like, as much fun as it wasn't, good on you. You can now say that you've done the thing. So very impressive. Matt and I are not far behind. Actually, we're only 2 oracles away from being able to say the exact same thing. So
only 1 oracle each, right? Because you've each played 1.
Oh, that's true. Matt, did you beat Ages?
I think I beat Seasons.
Okay. So, yeah, 1 oracle each and not the same one. Very fun. Very fun. All right. Well, I think that is going to about do it for this episode. Max, thanks for joining us. Yeah, you know what? It's I really thought that it would be more fun to at least enjoy the trashing of a thing, but
it's just overall not a great experience.
Yep. Overall theme, overworld theme, really good. Sand Temple, really good. Good job, Spirit Tracks.
Literally everything else, not great. Okay, cool. Max, real quick before we get out of here, I know you just did this 2 weeks ago, but please go ahead and remind everybody where they can follow you on the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I run a website called HyruleInterviews.com. I always talk about it as if there's a bunch of us, but it's just me. And I basically maintain and am constantly adding to a database of interviews and quotes with any Zelda developer. So anyone who has contributed to a Zelda product, even stuff like the CDI Zelda games, like I have interviews with their creators in there. And my goal is to preserve all this, kind of like archive it for the future, but also for myself to get a better understanding of how the game design thinking happened for the Zelda series. And then last but not least, I really like to highlight the lesser known people who built Zelda. Right, the big names like Miyamoto and Aonuma get a lot of attention. They have as many interviews as everyone else put together, but a lot of other people, thousands of other people, have helped build Zelda over the years. So I like highlighting those people.
Awesome.
Anyways, you can search for me on any social site, basically Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Blue Sky, and you'll find me.
Beautiful. Highly recommend you go do that. Hyrule Interviews is a great resource. And as always, Max, we appreciate you coming on the show. Your perspective is always interesting, and it's always a fun discussion. And I'm really looking forward to being able to get into a conversation about things that we all like more in the future, because those discussions are always a little bit more stimulating. So going to be a really fun time. We have a lot of that coming up. So going to be great. And until then, I hope you're well, man. And, we'll catch up with you before too long.
Absolutely. And congrats on your upcoming wedding, Matt.
Thank you very much. Very excited. Appreciate it. Always happy to have you on, Max.
It's going to be a fun party, and we're all crossing our fingers as me being the person who's officiating the ceremony. I'm really hoping that this loss of voice situation is a thing that lasts throughout this weekend and then is completely resolved by the time the actual wedding rolls around. So
just gonna have to down as many hot toddies as you can fit.
God,
That'll fix you.
Challenge accepted. You hear that, Matt? I'm gonna drink 5 hot toddies right before performing your wedding ceremony.
Hey, that can't be as bad as your brother-in-law who performed your wedding ceremony. He was under the influence of some stronger stuff than hot toddies.
Yes, but you know what? He got us married, and we love him, so it was a ton of fun.
No doubt about that.
Okay. All right. Well, I think it's time to get out of here for the week. Of course, next week we're going to be back with a whole new flavor of Zelda with our first Four Swords Adventures episode. It's going to be a great time. Matt, how does it feel knowing that you're going to come back from your honeymoon and have to play a bunch of Four Swords Adventures?
I'm actually kind of excited about it, if we're going to be honest. I've been having a lot of fun playing Four Swords.
Cool.
Yeah, Four Swords Adventures is great.
Yeah, it's been a pleasant surprise so far. So there's a little teaser for that whole mini season. Matt and I don't hate it, and there's every possibility in the world that it climbs in the ranking above, at the very least, Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. So
I think that is almost entirely ensured.
Yeah, but we'll see. We still have got about a third of the game left to play, and I guess it could go really downhill at some point. But anyway. All right, y'all. If you enjoyed today's show and you would like a little extra Sacred Realms in your life, you can head over to patreon.com/sacredrealmspod and become a patron. If you've got no rupees, it's not a problem. 5-star Apple Podcast reviews are a great free way to support us. More reviews means that more people see our show, and that makes us very happy Hylians. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Sacred Realms Pod for updates on the podcast and for behind-the-scenes action. Sacred Realms will be back next Wednesday with our thoughts on Four Swords Adventures Chapter 1. We'd love for you to play along with us and to share your thoughts on our social channels, but I'm at a complete loss to even tell you how you could possibly do that with this game. So, do a Google. I mean, I'm sure it's able to be emulated just in like a single player mode. But if you happen to be a person with a GameCube, a copy of the game, and 4 Game Boy Advances with link cables, then go nuts. Good for you. Matt, do you think anybody's going to be playing this game along with us? Like a single person?
I seriously doubt it. But you know what? That's okay. We still just do this for us.
I played it in December when I first heard you guys were recording it. I played through it.
Wow, look at that.
Cool.
Someone played with us.
And I do have a GameCube and 4 Game Boy Advances and 4 like but I still played it by myself because I didn't invite friends over for it.
Oh. Well, that's fun. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts as somebody who played the entire game in its single-player mode, which is not the way that we're doing it, but I've been led to believe is a very different experience than the whole 4-player situation. So, lots to dig into there. But in the meantime, y'all, may your hearts be full. May your arrows never miss. I'm going to go not talk for 48 hours. We'll catch you next week.
Sacred Realms is an independent, listener-supported podcast, which is produced, edited, and mixed by me, Lyndon Willoughby. Business operations are handled by Matt Willoughby. Our music is generously provided by Darknuck and is available to listen to on Spotify. Finally, we'd like to thank Nintendo for continuing to create such exceptional and innovative experiences.